Hello, my YouTube friends, and happy Saturday. I guess today we're going to have to talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant being Nextera Energy Partners, NEP. Those of you who've been watching me for a while are well aware I've been talking about it a good bit. I was buying it in the low 20s as it went into the low $30 range. It has since drifted all the way back down and now is making lows, and I think it closed on Friday at $17 and change. So what's going on and why is it corrected so much? Well, unfortunately, a lot of reasons. Starting with the last quarter was not such great earnings. They missed expectations. I think they even took a loss, which wasn't so wonderful, of course. And then you add to it interest rates looking like they might be higher for longer, especially on the long end. And the field that they're in is heavily borrowing. So if the interest rates are higher, their borrowing rates are going to be higher, which is going to be tougher to make the dividend payments that they've been making in the past. And then you add the last piece into it, which is Trump being elected to president, who doesn't seem to have a real affinity towards wind and solar and energy comprised of, you know, non-renewable things. So maybe going forward, we'll find out that's incorrect, and maybe he really does push that going forward. But I'm not real sure, and I think the market's really nervous about with Trump in office. Maybe they won't get some of the subsidies they've been getting, and it may impede their ability to continue to grow. Now, I had way too many shares when I was buying it. Between the time when it got up higher and when it was drifting down, I was continuing to lighten up my position, which is why, me personally, I haven't been super concerned about it. At this point, I still have it and I have the right size trade on because I'm not too concerned either way. If it goes lower, and forgive me, even if it goes to zero, I'd be okay with that at this point. If I had kept all the shares that I originally put on, but I was over attracted to the yield. Fortunately, I've gotten that payment for the past year or even longer. I think my first purchases were over a year ago, which has made up for a lot of the loss that it's carried going into yesterday. I have no plans to sell it, but that doesn't necessarily mean I think it'll be a great investment going forward. And those of you who need every penny working for you, maybe there are better places to put it. But at least for me, I'm going to stick with it, see how it plays out. Wherever it goes, will be all right. Now, as always, keep in mind this is not financial advice. I'm just sharing what works for me, and you guys need to do your own research for you. Reach out to a financial advisor, do your own research. Whatever you do for your own investments is what I would suggest. But in terms of me for Nextera Energy Partners at this point, I'm just going to sit on it, and wherever it goes, it goes. Hopefully, they're able to continue to pay that dividend. At this point, it's outrageously high percentage, which makes me suspicious that they'll be able to. And even the company out in New York that had downgraded them, essentially what they had said is by 2026 that they're going to have to be cutting their dividend either way, which is what I had prepared for no matter what. So hopefully they don't have to cut it to zero. I guess we'll see. The interesting thing is, I mean, I'm sure you guys have been watching since Trump won, seeing the Trump trade really play out and the things that are, you know, that they feel like he is favorable to really taking off, and the things that he isn't really reversing the other way. I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think that continues over the next few years, or do you think it's just a short knee jerk reaction? It's amazing to me. I mean, Tesla was trading, I think, $250 a share before the election, and closed in 3 days at $320 a share. An incredible run. I hope you guys have some Tesla in your account. But there were other things that Coinbase moved like that as well, and Bitcoin, which I think it's incredible to see these moves. I'm curious to see what happens with the cryptos because originally Trump had said they're going to have a division specifically set towards making crypto a part of, and I think Bitcoin specific, but a part of the Federal Reserve money. So if they do that, that's huge for Bitcoin. I worry that it becomes an avenue for them to just have a department where they know when the government is buying Bitcoin and selling it, and legally they can front run the market. I joke with my brother I'd work there for free if I could have the information about when they're going to buy and sell Bitcoin, because the amount of money that the government puts into something in a market like Bitcoin, which as big as it is, really isn't all that big. It's going to have monstrous moves, and It's really going to push the market knowing what they're going to do before they do it. And will he do an Elon Musk efficiency department? If they really did that, it would be really smart and maybe help grow things quicker by being more efficient as a government. There's a lot of government waste. Now, when I was back in college, I was super enthralled and thought it was really cool. A buddy and I went out to DC. We walked around from office to office, and I got an internship working free for a senator from Montana. But the stories I heard of what some of the offices did when it came towards the end of the term or the budget for each year, and they would throw things away to make sure they used up their entire budget. Because if they didn't use up their entire budget, they were liable to have their budget cut going forward. I had another friend who worked in the schools for state university, and similar, they got punished if they were financially responsible. If they did things that were smart and started growing the budget and actually generating income and revenue, they started getting punished and their budgets were cut, as opposed to seeing it as people who knew how to run a budget really well. It's almost like this backwards mentality, and I'm guessing there's a lot of fraud and things going on that shouldn't be. So if they're able to go into it the way that they look at businesses and go through each and every department and really monitor what's going on and do a better job, not only should it cut the budget, it helps make it more efficient and let our country be able to grow and potentially even invest in technology and innovation. We really downplay like some of these countries where if you've never been there, feel like, oh my God, their whole world is so much different and it's so dangerous and whatever else. If you get to travel to some of these countries in Southeast Asia, not only is that not true, it's almost the opposite. You go into their subway systems and their public transportation. It's unbelievably clean. You don't have people down there that are harassing you and giving you a hard time and throwing their trash and possibly even doing worse things. There's some videos on it. You should check it out. And then when you see their authority figures, the police and people around, it's not this intimidating, oh my God, they're there to watch me and be. No, they're there to help and make sure that the places are kept clean and that people do what they're supposed to. They even have cameras everywhere, and we as Americans would feel like, oh my God, they're infringing on my rights. I don't want to be watched all the time. But the watching is also what keeps it safe and comfortable. I mean, when we were in Singapore, I felt comfortable with my son, who at the time was, I think, 11 or 12 years old, that if he wanted to go out by himself and go down to the mall, I had no concern that anything would happen because A, it's really simple to get around, and B, there's so many cameras and everything, nobody really does anything, and it's super safe. It's kind of nice, and it doesn't feel infringing the way that we think of it. Anyway, I don't think the Trump administration is going to get that far, but I do think if they're able to go through the budgets, narrow down how much we're spending, use that money better to fix roads, create traffic lights, more schools, whatever it is we need to build up our country, the money is there. We could actually cut our deficit and grow our economy still and potentially end up in a great position again. On the flip side, on the negative, they could just go in and take for themselves and things could just continue the way that they are. I really don't think, and I hope that's not what the case is. I hope going forward we have two people who've done really well for themselves and have no need to really take for themselves and want to really make the world better and go in and start trying to improve things. And then interestingly, the Fed did cut a quarter point, as pretty much everybody had expected. The rhetoric was the same about being data dependent, and I still think the Fed is overly restrictive. So we really could see a nice boom going forward. The markets are at all-time highs. Hopefully your accounts are. Even with NEP, that our accounts seem to be going higher and doing better. You had Amazon close at $208 a share. Google seems to be rebounding again. Meta seems to be going higher. Palo Alto Networks was making new highs. CrowdStrike is back to $330 a share after their big debacle. I think Starbucks is even pushing around $100 a share. The economy seems to be chugging along despite the inflation and the gloom and doomers and all that fear mongering going on out there. If the Fed's cutting rates and earnings are good, I would expect to see things continue. Until something changes in that, There's nothing that I see in the horizon that should cause a big collapse, as a lot of the people talk about. I know credit card debt is really high, but let's talk about that for a second. If inflation has gone up and things cost more money, even if people are buying the same amount of goods, they're obviously going to have a bigger balance on their credit cards, because if the bananas you're buying went from 29 cents to 59 cents, well, that's going to be a bigger balance on the credit card, showing more credit card debt. It doesn't mean that there's this huge problem ahead. It just means we've had inflation. And if the salaries have kept up to be able to pay those things, well, it just is what it is. The default rates, while they've gone up, are really going back up to where they're more normal prior to COVID. Don't forget, during the pandemic, people didn't have to work and they got money sent to them. And I don't want to make it like it was all this free money. It was a very scary time. People weren't allowed to work, so they allowed a little bit more of unemployment type of benefits to be sent out to people. Well, that stopped, so it would be natural that we would go back up to the default rates that we were having prior to that. Because during that time, it was very hard to default. You were allowed to skip on mortgage payments, you were allowed to skip on rent, and you had money coming in, which drove up a lot of the inflation. I do think that the supply chain was part of the problem and why we saw it go so high. Now that that's passed, the companies have learned how to take advantage of it all at the same time, which is the negative, but they should be able to make money. They're not oversupplying things, they're keeping it at a better balance as to what people need. Sometimes they run out a little bit more, but I think that's almost on purpose to help them keep their prices better, to where their margins are better. I understand it could be looked at as price gouging, but prior to the pandemic, there were some things that I just kind of shook my head and thought, geez, how does this company even make money? And if they're going to survive, that they need to make a little bit of money. If they're able to make tax cuts, if they're able to add tariffs without causing monstrous inflation, maybe it balances out on our income taxes. I have pretty nutty views as to what I think, and I know for some people it wouldn't be fair, but I almost think a VAT would be better. That would be instead of income tax. I think if somebody makes $10 an hour, they should get $10 an hour, and that the taxes should be on it where the merchants are picking it up. So if you go to a store and a shirt says that it costs $15, when you get to the register, it should be $15. But I also think incorporated into all those prices should be taxes, so that the government could afford to thrive and survive and fix our roads and help with the police and fire and teachers and the things that they do. I almost think a good way to get to be able to tax the wealthy, that there's all sorts of concerns on how to tax them, is maybe there's a price point where the taxes go up exorbitantly. Anything over $50,000 that people are buying, maybe it's a, I don't know, 60% tax rate. And once you get to 100,000, maybe it's 100% tax rate that is a wealth tax. Because I'm guessing the guy who goes out and buys some $200,000 Ferrari would probably pay the $350,000 if that was the price, because there were taxes on it. And the companies that sell these goods, of course, they're going to fight it and they wouldn't want it, but it actually may make their items more desirable and help their business. Some of the people in that category, it's not going to impact one way or another. Or if you're buying some $10 million yacht, maybe there should be a huge luxury tax on these things to help fund the government, so you don't have to worry about their income tax. Now, I am not in the mix, I'm not in those rooms, so my simple answer is maybe they work, maybe they don't work. It's very hard to know the negative repercussions of things that you think through without implementing and see what the problems are. And then it's very easy afterwards to be able to say, well, obviously that was a huge mistake. They should have seen this coming. I'm not a big guy who thinks that there's a conspiracy theory. I think that it's tough to see what the impacts of things will be. And when you go to the tariffs, I feel the same way. It's something that I would probably take a shot on if I were the guy in charge, but there might be repercussions that we don't see coming that are not great. The obvious one is there could be inflation, but who knows what else? It could cause problems with our trade partners or whatever. At the same time, if it's able to lower our debt, our deficit, and potentially help control how much we're spending in taxes, I think it could work out really well for all of us. We'll just have to see, and if he even implements it, because sometimes people say things when they're trying to get into office. And what does this mean, and what changes am I making in my portfolio? Really nothing. In my set it and forget it one, it doesn't matter who's in office. I still think they're great companies. I just kind of stick with it and goes where it goes. For now, it seems to be doing just fine. And in my trading account, I'm probably sticking with the ones that are the Trump trades and just hoping they continue. It'll be a bumpy ride. It'll be pretty volatile, but it's quite possible that the things that are moving because he is elected will continue to move. I guess we'll see. I'm not really, I'm not going to chase it, but I'm not going to get out of the ones that have been flying either. And I'm not going to get out of the ones that have been going the other way because it might be a knee jerk reaction. For the ones that are flying higher, they're doing well enough that they're outpacing the ones that are going the other way. So I guess I hope it continues and that I'll just kind of grin and bear it as NEP gets worse because the things that are going up are outperforming what it's doing towards the downside. Anyway, if you haven't already, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button. Make some comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking. What do you think about the election? Do you think the market's going to continue higher the way it's been going? I mean, you all know I do, but I'm always bullish. So I guess I always think that way. I hope you had a great week. I hope everything's going well. Make sure to stop in tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to do a live. I really like the platform. It's kind of fun. I like that I get to chat with some people and answer some questions. So I hope some of you can make it. Have a great day. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you later.